Welcome to our midweek message. This is Pastor Reed coming to you from First Baptist Church of Olathe. I'm so glad you're taking the opportunity to listen, to watch, to be encouraged. During this season of Lent, we've been journeying together through the Gospel of Luke, and I'm simply sharing with you something that stood out to me, my reflections on the reading. Today, my reflections come from the story of the Prodigal Son. It's one of those super famous stories, and it gets me every time. So I thought I'd share just a little something. As a kid, we always used to go over to our friend's house, and it didn't take long to figure out that each family, that each household had their own rules about how to live life. When I went to one friend's house, the Powells, the rules were a bit more strict. There were rules about when we could be there, when we couldn't be there, where we could go, where we could wear our shoes, what we could do. They had things reined in fairly tightly. And then when I went over to my friend Kelly's house, we showed up with no parents. It was all good. We could do whatever we wanted. We could have free reign of the fridge. When I stayed for sleepovers, we could stay up as long as we wanted. We could play whatever we wanted. We could watch whatever we wanted. There really were no rules. And so each household that I went to as a kid had different rules. And so you have to learn what the rules are for each household. Corey Asbury has a song that begins begins with, "Lord, I confess I've been a criminal. I've stolen your breath and sang my own song." And the next verse begins with, "Lord, I confess that I've been a prodigal, made for your house. I walk my own road." This song, along with reading the scripture, made me think about whose house do we belong to? What are the rules in this house? And as I reflected on the story, I came to the conclusion that there's one rule that really is the most important rule. Well, let's talk about the story. So, in the story, there are two sons and a father. The father has a significant amount of wealth. He has servants and he has lands. And the younger son grows tired of the ordinary life on the ranch, so to speak. And so he goes to his father and he says, I want my inheritance now. And this doesn't sound like maybe it's that big of a deal, but recognize that people only receive inheritances when people die. And so what he is saying to him is, in order for me to be able to go and live the life I want, it would be better for me if you were just dead and you would give me what I wanted. And so the father relents and he gives the younger son his inheritance. And so the younger son goes off and he blows through this money in wild living and debauchery. And he finds himself having to take a job working for the most unclean animal possible, feeding the most unclean animal possible, pigs. And as he's feeding the pigs and doing this hard labor, he comes to the realization that even the servants in my father's home eat better than I do. And so he comes to himself. He comes to this place where he's ready to accept this. And in verse 17, he says this, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will rise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. So that this son who desired the wealth that his father would pass along to him when he died, having blown through all of it, comes to the conclusion, comes to a place that he needs to he's not worthy to be called a son. He has made his own bed, but perhaps the father will have mercy on him and at least give him a job and food to eat. And so he begins on his journey home. And as he's approaching the house, the father sees him while he's still a distance off, and the father runs to him and he throws his hands around him and his arms around him, and at least this is a picture I'm getting. And here's what the scripture says. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. So that script that he had practiced, he now professes to the father. But the father said to his servant, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. I think the most important rule when we come to God is this, is to recognize that he made you for his house. He desires you to dwell with him. He loves you. He wants a relationship with you. You haven't shown up to be a hired servant. You haven't showed up to be a second-class citizen. You belong here. You belong to God, with God, in relationship to him as your loving Father. So as you come, don't come with fear and trepidation. Don't come as one who has practiced the script in hopes that perhaps God will scrape some scraps onto the floor so for you to eat. Come knowing that you are a child of the Most High God. You were made for this house. That you are beautiful to behold. And as you come to this house, you have something to share. That's really all it is. Lay aside your doubts. Lay aside your fears. Lay aside your guilt. Lay aside your shame. And simply come home. Be blessed. Be a blessing. Remember, you are made for his house.